Hi, I'm Sarah. Today I'm going to tell you about an artwork made in 1986 by Juan Francisco Elso Padilla called Por América, José Martí. This is an installation made of a diverse range of materials, including wood, plaster, earth, synthetic pigments, synthetic hair, glass, and blood. It depicts José Martí, a Cuban hero known for his role in the country's independence from Spain. He appears to be walking or bracing himself while holding a sword. To me, his facial expression appears very worn out. He's barefoot and his clothes look tattered, as if he's engaging in some sort of a physical struggle. There are dark bands around his ankles and wrists. Maybe they're scraps of what used to be his pant legs or sleeves, or perhaps they are broken shackles symbolizing a liberation. He's also being punctured by numerous daggers, some of which are also piercing the surface in front of his feet, as if there's even more physical danger awaiting him in his next steps. When I look at this work, I think about some familiar Christian or Catholic imagery. For example, Elso makes a pretty clear allusion to Saint Sebastian, who we see most commonly pierced with many arrows. This wood sculpture also takes after the style of Spanish religious carvings of Jesus or other saints, and these would have been known in Cuba due to Spain's colonial and missionary influence. These figures would also become integral within Afro-Cuban traditions, namely in Santeria rituals, in which these icons would be sanctified by organic materials from sacred locations or the ritual participants' own blood. The artist did, in fact, mix his blood with his wife's blood inside of Martí's figure, in a ritualistic dedication not only to the love between him and his wife, but his love for Martí. Elso was a Catholic raised Santeria practitioner, and his works often meditated on Afro Cuban and ancient Latin American spirituality, if not involving such practices directly in their creation. Essentially, this isn't just a physical installation, it takes a personal, spiritual, and cultural significance as the evidence of a ritual conducted by the artist himself. Returning to its Catholic symbolism, Martí takes on somewhat of a Christ like presence. He's worn out, beaten down, and gruesomely wounded. He's a very important figure in Cuban history, somewhat of a national father, and surely made significant sacrifices in his liberatory contributions. José Martí was a poet and intellectual who died in 1895 fighting for Cuba's independence from Spain. His literary work can be described as lyrical and dense, yet socio-politically aware. He stood strongly for the ideas of Cuban nationalism, Latin American self-sufficiency and self-determination, and he strongly criticized the United States government. As he became a martyr of sorts, it was very strategically wise for Cuban leaders to identify with Martí's image. After the unsuccessful July 26 Moncada attack, Fidel Castro was put on trial and made his famous "History will absolve me" speech, in which he refers to Martí numerous times. The Cuban government would later quote Martí's work in the Socialist Constitution and other official documents. Around the same year that Elso created his Por America installation, the Communist Party established the Centros de Estudios Martianos for the purpose of linking Martí's literature with that of Marxism-Leninism and interpreting his work as an endorsement of the current government. Though Martí identified imperialism, US expansionism, and other political ills as those inhibiting Cuba and the greater Latin America from achieving liberation, he didn't necessarily make any Marxist conclusions from these understandings. In fact, his ideas are just malleable enough to be adopted by administrations in between Cuban independence from Spain in 1898 and the success of the Cuban Revolution in 1959. Yes, even the US-backed Batista dictatorship, later overthrown by Cuban revolutionaries, also claimed Martí's ideas in legitimizing their own. For the most part, Cuban communists have successfully argued that Martí's anti-imperialist ideology is one that logically precedes that of the Communist Party, and that they have a justified claim to Martí's name. But his national significance becomes very clear when we see how important it is and was to all Cuban leaders since Cuba's independence from Spain to identify with Martí and argue in some way that Martí would have supported their ideas. Elso expresses the cultural significance of Cuba's syncretic spirituality as one that's national and historical by deifying a figure such as Jose Marti. He seems to argue that lines can't be drawn between spirituality, liberation, and artistic creation, and that Cuban culture draws from many sources. Elso's own self understanding as a Cuban, Catholic born Santeria practicing intellectual and artist is so deeply evocative of Cuban culture as a whole and so thoroughly expressed in his work Por America, Jose Marti. Thank you.